that the Israeli state has committed against the people of Palestine, not only with their complicity, but with the fuel that they've dug from our land. And we are here to say no and no more of that call for genocide, comrades.
Following Israel's biggest coal supplier, Colombia, officially suspending exports to the nation this August, multiple South African unions and pro-Palestine groups continue to rally for initiating a large-scale energy embargo on Israel. Pictured here are protesters outside of coal giant Glencore's head offices in Melrose Arch. Similar pro-Palestine demonstrations have been occurring on Wits campus this year, as protesters refuse to let their voices go unheard.
We are, particularly in South Africa, as well as having those international legal obligations, as you say, we have a particular responsibility, politically and morally, if you like, to adhere to the Palestinians' call. And at the moment, one of their calls is for an energy embargo, because they know that will really hit at the heart of the Israeli military-industrial complex.
In opposition to the apartheid regime, South Africa faced pressure from the rest of the world in the form of economic sanctions. These sanctions placed a huge strain on the South African government and economy, and are considered one of the main catalysts which brought the end to apartheid. Hedging South Africa's history with sanctions, protesters hope to set a precedent for the world to follow.
And in our case, there was eventually an oil embargo on apartheid South Africa, and that really worked. That was one of the things that helped to put pressure, and that was people around the world protesting, for instance, at Shell, one of the oil companies that was trying to circumvent the oil embargo. And so likewise, we have a responsibility to stand with the Palestinian people and to take the same actions to put pressure on, for instance, Glencore, where we know that it is selling coal to apartheid Israel.
So far in 2024, South Africa has supplied Israel with over 169,000 metric tons of coal. This proposed embargo would pose difficulties to Israeli military operations. However, the success of sanctions and embargoes has been mixed throughout history. Although they proved successful in apartheid South Africa and the Cuban Missile Crisis, for example, similarly, there are multiple notable American sanctions on Middle Eastern countries that were unsuccessful. However, this proposed embargo is more similar to the ones imposed on apartheid South Africa, even if South Africa today has less economic solidity to fall back on in cutting off exports.
Firstly, I think our national interest is to not be complicit in genocide. Secondly, the amount of coal we sell to Israel for us is relatively small. Now, there are lots of other markets. It's really not going to be a massive dent in our economy. Thirdly, look at the profits Glencore makes. I mean, in 2022, they reported $32 billion of profits. Now, if they can't absorb a tiny amount of coal coming from one of their mines in one of the countries they operate in, I'm sorry, it's a false argument to put the issue onto the workers. If you're saying that it's not in our national interest to make sure we are not held complicit, we are held to account by the standards we set for ourselves under our constitution, then I think it's a false argument, because it just is in our national interest every which way you look at it.
Beyond a stoic Melrose Arch security presence, the nearly 200 protesters gathered outside Glencore offices waited eagerly for a response. Nico Geldenhuys, Glencore's senior legal advisor, appeared to keenly listen to the demands of the protesters, but chose not to make a statement.
We bring them in front of the crowd, not necessarily to hear them speak, but to show them our power and to humiliate them with their lack of words in face of the crimes that they're accused for. In terms of the response that we expect from them, it's quite possible that they will fold on this, because it's not a huge amount of their actual production, and they're, in this case at least, in contravention not just of the smaller working class communities that generally fight against them, they're in contravention of the political sentiments of the majority of the country and of the government and a lot of its structures. But today was a good start in bringing it back into the metropolitans and bringing it to their door, so to speak. Because it's very easy for them to send the security out, send the police out, never know what happens, limited accountability, exactly how Marikana happened. But when we bring it here and we bring it to all the people in the cities, no one can hide. Everyone must choose if they're for or against.
As of the making of this video, Glencore are yet to respond to these calls to action. Their silence, however, will do little to deter protesters, who keep the well-being of the Palestinian people close to their hearts as they strive for change.